So let's get into the workshop itself. Today, we're going to be talking about how to create a basic T-table that matches your skills with what the job description is looking for. I'm also going to talk to you about some of the advantages, mainly three of them, for networking. I also want to really drill down on understanding why and when it is important to leave off some of your experience on your resume as well as in your qualifications when you're at the interview that may go beyond the company's needs. And well, like I say, we're really going to drill down on that. I'm going to explain to you what that means. I'm going to also explain to you how to avoid being looked at as being overqualified. And then lastly, to successfully keep the momentum up of job search. So if you are not familiar with the career force, in your follow-up email that Jennifer talked about that you're going to be receiving either tomorrow or Thursday, you're going to get a handout called Career Force Locations. So the first thing I'd like for you to do when you get that follow-up email is take a look at where your local career force is closest to you if you don't already know. In addition to that, we offer additional services. So we have job service, that's the department I'm under. We also have vocational rehabilitation services. We also have the dislocated worker program. And then we have the the veteran services. So if you are a veteran, first off, thank you for serving our country, but please reach out to us because we have additional services that we can help you with. All right, so let's get into this. The first thing that I want you to do is we're going to do a little bit of practicing. So before we get to the good news, let me hear in just one word how your job search has been going so far. Now, please don't use any words that you would not use at an interview. So with one word, I am asking you, how has your job search over 50 been going so far? And Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind turning your camera on and giving me some of those answers, that would be great. I don't know that she heard me. Oh, okay. Yes. So what are they saying, Jennifer? Oh, are you on mute? Because I can't hear you.
So sorry. So it
Okay.
looks like they are saying um, fair and slow, curious,
Okay.
discouraging, interesting, challenging, good,
Okay.
frustrating.
Okay. So, you know what? First off, I want to tell you guys thank you so much for being honest because it is frustrating. It is slow. That's what we're going to be talking about with the momentum. Looking for a job is a job and it's a difficult position to be in. And then also we're going to be talking about what is your narrative towards yourself? What are you actually saying? Here is what Harvard Business Review has said. Employers have historically, viewed this group of potential employees with skepticism. So in other words, they've looked at us with skepticism because we are older. But in the truth of what's happening now since the pandemic happened is that they are looking at us for wisdom. We're now considered seasoned employees. We are have a higher standard than some of the younger employees that they've been hiring. We're not at work texting, we're not on our phone, on our cell phone while we're at work. We're actually doing the job. A lot of the skills that we have as far as being adaptable and flexible, a lot of people do not have those skills. So I love that Harvard Business Review is actually respecting us and giving us some um, recognition for the hard work and time and effort that we put into our careers. So we're also, noted as being dedicated, loyal, enthusiastic. So now I want you to start to remember some of those things when you're actually interviewing. It's really fascinating to me when I'm working with a person who is over 50. For one, I should not know that. So if I'm talking to you on the phone, how would I know how old you are? I don't, but you tell me. I talked to a gentleman recently who he told me 9 times about how old he was, and that he was too old to go back to work, and yet he wanted me to help him find a job. And I said to him, "Do you know that you've said to me 9 times something in reference to your age. And he said, well, what are you counting? I said, I sure am. This is something that's really important. If you're doing a phone screening interview, which are very common nowadays, and you explain to them how old you are, or you explain to them that, you know what, I plan on retiring in a couple years, they're more than likely not going to hire you. There isn't very many companies that I know of that will hire you, put a lot of time and effort into training you and getting you ready for the job, knowing that you're going to be gone in 6 months. So we're going to talk a little more about that. So what has changed since you last looked for work? Well, goodness, there's a lot of things that have changed. So one of the things that have changed is that you need to match your skills to the skills that are listed on the job description. So previous to my work here with the state of Minnesota, I worked for a nonprofit as a hiring manager. And what I did was went through your resumes. When I was going through resumes, I quickly learned how to predict and figure out how old a person was. And then in addition to that, many times I would sit and ask myself, did you even read the job description? Because your resume does not line up with the type of position I have open, and I'm not convinced that you actually qualify when you probably do. Another thing we're going to talk about is networking and how important that is. Excuse me. One of the things that has changed the most in networking is the online piece. So I want you to make sure that your social network is your social media is appropriate. Please do not have pictures of, of anything inappropriate. Please know that nowadays your employers do look at your Facebook. They will Google you. They will look at your LinkedIn. So make sure that you are presenting yourself in the best light possible. And then also networking is with people. We still say, and this is true, the quickest way to get a job is a lot of times based on who you know. So, when we asked how your job search is going, somebody said slow, somebody said frustrating. What happens when we're looking for a job is that we kind of get, I don't, for lack of a better term, beat down because it is sickening looking for a job. What I want you to do is lift your head up, throw them shoulders back, and everybody that you bump into, say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Do you know of anybody that's hiring? Then the last thing that's changed too is teleconferencing. Goodness, we're doing teleconferencing right now. That's one of the reasons I wanted you to write something in the chat, because if you haven't done it before, now you can say you have. But teleconferencing too can go as far as an interview where you're being interviewed online. Let's say that that's actually happening. If you're being interviewed online and you're feeling unsure about it, reach out to us and we can do a mock interview. Now, when we're doing a mock interview with you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about, want you fully dressed as if you were going to the interview, all the way down to your shoes. There's something that it does to us mentally when we're fully dressed. The second thing I will talk to you about is your lighting. I'm in an interview room right now here in our building in Duluth. The lighting is not that bad. I sit under fluorescent lights and I intentionally sit here. But if I were to do an interview, I would not have the door behind me because people tend to walk by. I purposely did that just so that if you do see somebody and you notice it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I don't want, if I'm doing a virtual interview, any distractions whatsoever. I want you to be paying close attention to what I'm saying to you as opposed to people that are walking by. Then the most important thing that's changed out of all of this is you. You've changed. So, how have you changed? Meaning, what types of skills have you been doing since you were either laid off or quit your job or were let go? Have you been doing some skills? Do you know that actually being online and looking at different jobs, you could call that research? And the reason you can call it research is because you're researching the different employees and employers that are in your area. In addition to that, you're looking at what's their pay, do they offer benefits? That is research. So I'm just saying that you need to be able to recognize what your skills are. If you are asked how you've changed since you have not been working, you are going to be able to have some really good, strong answers to give the interviewer so that you're able to get the job. Jenny, this looks like a great time for a question.
So we have two that came in. One says, match skills to skills listed. I already have 5 different resumes. Is that part of what you mean?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. So that's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that. You if you've applied for 5 different jobs, you're going to have 5 different resumes. Now, don't get overwhelmed with this and think, good Lord, Gloria, you telling me I got to make a new resume every time I'm applying for a job? No. But what you want to do is you want to make what I call the original resume. Then you want to make, and keep that, keep it saved. Then let's say that you're going to apply for ABC Supply as a sales position. So you want to take your original resume and you want to get out ABC Supply's job description, and you want to take off some of the skills that ABC Supply is looking for. And if you have those skills, you need to make sure they're on that resume. So what you're doing is you're actually tailoring your resume towards the job you're applying for. Now, one other thing that's super important about your resume, so I want you to take a look at it and see if you can figure out how old you are by looking at it. Do you know that I work with a lot of people who they go back to 1983? I want you to go back 10 years, at the most 15 years. Now, I've had people get very upset with me and they're like, Lori, really? I got 33 years of construction. I put a lot of hard work into that. And now you're telling me I can't put that on my resume? Yeah, straight up. That's what I'm telling you. Because let's figure you got 30 years of experience in an industry. How old do you think you are? And how I can figure that out. You're probably around 50 years old. You don't know for sure if I want to hire a young whippersnapper or somebody who's seasoned. Age discrimination is illegal, but it happens all the time. The truth is that your resume is only as good as the fact that it gets you an interview. And if it gets you the interview, now when you're there, you're a real live person and you can convince me why you're the best person for the job. I can't just throw you away like I can your resume. So do you see the difference in that? I also want to encourage you to attend our resume class because you're going to get some more tips on this. Jenny, did you have one more question too?
Yes, there was one that asked, how do we use the Harvard Business Review items? Put them in our cover letter or resume?
I wouldn't use them on either one, but where you want to use them is in your mind. So a lot of this is just adjusting your attitude a little bit. I want you to remember the value that you bring to the table. And that is why we have that slide in there, is that so you recognize your value for who you are and for the skills that you worked really hard to acquire. And then Harvard Business School is lining that up with exactly the way that you need to be feeling about yourself. Instead of saying, I am too old, you're going to talk about the great things that you are, okay, instead of the things that you're not. It's very fascinating to me that when I actually drill down on somebody and say, what, list some of your skills for me, they tell me, I can't do this, I won't do that, I am not, to get into the things they can't do. I want you to recognize your skills for what you can do. What can you bring to the table? What I say a lot of times in this one, I want you to memorize if you can. I want you to memorize that the wisdom that I have, I paid a high price for. And in turn, I believe I can make you a lot of money and I'll make some money too. Do you know that most people, when they're interviewing, they're going in with the attitude, what's you going to do for me? What's the pay? What's the benefits? I've had people that I interviewed that asked me for an advance and I hadn't even hired them. This stuff is really happening. So you're going to go in and you're going to be one standard above or more of what's going on with other people that are interviewing. Convince me you're the best person for the job and I'm going to give you a chance. But here's what really happens. When I'm interviewing you, first off, you're telling me your age. I can't legally ask you that, but it's not illegal if you tell me. The second thing you'll tell me is that I'm going to retire in 2 years. So one of the most common questions at an interview is, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? Or what are your career aspirations? Or something on that order. And you say, well, I just need to work until 2 years till I retire and I'm out of here, man. Now, why would I want to hire you? And to you, 2 years is a very long time. To me, 2 years is short if I am going to be in business for a long time. Might take me a year to train you in the position. My point out of this is when they ask you what are your career aspirations or where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years. Yes, okay, great. If you plan on retiring, that's fantastic. Not everybody can retire and not everybody wants to retire anymore. The deal is that since the pandemic happened and a lot of people were sitting at home with each other or all alone, they figured out, you know what, this retirement isn't what I thought it was going to be. If this is going to be mirroring my retirement, I don't want anything to do with it. I'm going to keep working. So when they ask you, what are your career aspirations? I want you to say, I see myself working for you, and hopefully I will have gotten a promotion. Now, even if you plan on retiring in 2 years, 3 years, whatever, the only thing we're guaranteed is today, right now, right here. We all might have plans in 3 to 5 years, but who knows what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years. So for the interview's sake, that is the important part, and the right answer is, I see myself working for you, and hopefully I will have gotten a promotion. All right, let's go on. This is our T-table chart, and when you're doing your cover letter, I would like for you to use this information on your cover letter as well as on your resume. So you're not going to do the identical part here on your resume, but on the cover letter, you can actually take a blank piece of paper and you can draw a T, and you can write on the left-hand side what the employer is looking for, and on the right-hand side, you write exactly how you qualify for that. So let's use number 1. It says recruiting team members. That came right off of the job description. So how I qualify for that is I exceeded all recruitment goals by attending job fairs and sourcing new applicants from various job boards. Now, I also want to encourage you that if you can add in numbers or percentages, that even makes it more powerful. Where let's say that you're going to add in, I exceeded all recruitment goals by increasing our recruitment team members from 3 to 5 people. I increased our sales, 50%. Do you see what I mean? By using either numbers or percentages, if you know what they are. If you don't know exactly what they are, you can use by approximately 50%. My point is that you are the director of the story in my head. So when I'm interviewing you, you are the director of the story in my head. You don't need to get into great detail, but I do want to know and get a good concept of what you did and how you would qualify for this job that I am looking to fill. So, networking, let's talk about networking. First thing I want you to ask yourself is, do I have the competitive skills that the employer is looking for? Jennifer, I'm going to have you put in the chat GCF Learning. I believe it's .com. So let's say that you want to brush up on your Excel skills, or let's say that you're not familiar with Outlook or emailing. I want you to go on GCF Learning and brush up on some of those things so that you do have the competitive skills that the employer is looking for. I also want you to ask yourself, do I want this job? That's a very common question during an interview. Why do you want this job? I used to ask that question, and we're taught after we ask these open-ended questions, do you want this job? We're taught to put zippers on our lips and let you go ahead and talk. If I would ask, why do you want this job? Many people would say, well, for the money. Well, that's not the right answer. We all work for money. If we love our job, that's a bonus. We all work for money. What I want you to say instead is, why do you want this job? I want you to, that's the time to build up the company. Say, you know what, I want to be part of your team. I know that you make an excellent product and I want to be a part of that. You don't get into the benefits or the income. And again, I want you to attend our interview workshop because you're going to get a better idea about more on why you don't say this stuff. But I want you to learn from the people who are already doing the work that you do. Now, sometimes that's easier said than done. So one of the ways you can find out about the culture of a place that you want to apply at is go on LinkedIn. We do have a LinkedIn class as well, workshop, but you can just go on there and do a little bit of your own research. See if you can find people that work there and see if they've written reviews on the company itself. If they haven't, just at least kind of do a little bit of research on the people that are working there, because that's going to give you a little better idea of what the culture is like too. It can also give you some insider tips on the company itself. I also want you to go on the company's website. You know, a lot of times when you are on the company's website, you can find out what their mission statement is. So if they ask you, why do you want to work here? You can quote the mission statement back to them. Another beautiful thing about networking when you're talking with people is that you have the potential to find some jobs that are not actually posted. Now, I want to tell you, one of the beautiful things about minnesotaworks.net is that we're free. So of course we're free to you, but we are free to the employers as well. So a lot of times you will be able to see those jobs before they're posted elsewhere because we're free. So a lot of our employers will put it on Minnesota Works first, and if they don't get applicants, then they pay to have it on a different job board. Indeed, for instance, they have to pay to post that job on there. But the beauty of networking when you're talking with people is that you might be able to find out a job that hasn't even been posted. You know, I sincerely had this happen. So when I was the hiring manager in my previous role, we had a large group of volunteers, and I would have, it was a nonprofit, so I would have business owners stop in from time to time and make a donation. Well, a lot of times they would stop in and they'd say, Glory, I have a position open and I need to fill it right away. Do you know of anybody that would be a good employee that I could hire right now? I don't want to go through the hassle of posting it because I need their help right away. Well, if you were already out and about volunteering and you're volunteering for me, I would recommend you immediately because I know that you're a good person. Well, that's networking in its purest form. So remember that. Um, it's important to create relationships that they will think of you first if something comes up. And that's exactly what happened when I was the hiring manager and we were dealing with the volunteers. So one of the things about teleconferencing that has changed is the good news is we're doing it right now. And I kind of touched base on that. But I also talked to you about doing a mock interview with us. And I'm going to talk to you about setting up your background. You know, when I sit at my desk, my background, I have a bunch of pictures of horses. They're little smaller pictures. They're cute. I love them. They bring me joy. But it would an interview having that busy background. Um, choose good lighting. If you have a darker room, you're known through virtual interviews as you're hiding something. And if you have too bright of a light, like I say, this light I think is fair. If you have too bright of a light, then it washes you out so they can't see you. It's important to dress the way you would face to face. Now let's talk about good eye contact and smiling. One of the things I recommend that you do is that you have a mirror somewhere close to you, not where the interviewer can see, but you know, behind your mirror, I mean, excuse me, behind your screen, and smile. Most employers want to hire friendly people to work with. So smile, present yourself as friendly because you are friendly. Also carry good eye contact. So I know where the camera is on my computer here, so I'm looking right at you. But please note that if I were to be turning my head to the side, how different that feels. So you carry eye contact just as if you were in person. Interesting, isn't that? You know, one thing I want to let you know too is that if you don't have this equipment to do a virtual interview, you can come to the Career Force and use our equipment. So don't get hung up on that. If they call you and want you to come in for interview, come to us and we'll set up your appointment and let us help you make meet all the ends. Okay. Uh, it's also important to make sure that your audio is good. You know, I noticed that we did 2 sound checks before this workshop started, but a lot of people were concerned that they couldn't hear anything. That's because we weren't talking. But the point is that you want to be able to hear each other. Now, let me tell you this. I had a gentleman who he came in, he used our equipment, and we had done a mock interview. He was completely prepared. So when he came in for the actual interview, again, he was using our equipment, and don't you suppose the internet went down? had this happen maybe twice since I started working here. One time was during a workshop I was doing with Sheila, who is our other Career Force co-host today. But anyways, this gentleman came running out of the interview room screaming, "Glory, Glory, what do I do?" So, well, first off, take a deep breath, know that this happens, and go back in there and call them and talk to them about how, technical difficulties, and show that you can still handle things in a crisis. So the gentleman got hired based on that. Isn't that interesting? So if your audio isn't good, make sure that you get a backup phone number to be able to call the person. So you're going to get this information when they're calling you for the interview or when they're emailing you for the interview. Please make sure you have a backup phone number. From time to time, our technical pieces will go down and I am able to call somebody and say, "Hey, are you still online? Because I'm not able to get online," and problem solve it very quickly. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how you have changed. So how do you feel about looking for employment now? And do those feelings show? One of the things that I really love about this workshop is that we're going to talk about you and your attitude. And do those feelings show? I work with a lot of people who they will, dig their heels in, cross their arms, and say, "That's not the way I was taught to do it." Or, "No, I'm not doing it that way because that's not in my job description." I want you to go in and convince the employer that, "Look, I will do the job the way you teach me how to do it. And not only that, I'll do it to the best of my ability." I challenge people when they say, "Well, that's not the way I was taught how to do it." I challenge you to say, "What do you care? You're getting paid to do it, and as long as it's not illegal, do it the way the employer wants to do it." Now, because we are seasoned and have a lot of wisdom that we paid a high price for, we may be able to make suggestions, but you don't make those suggestions until you've been there for a little while and earned that respect. Then the employer is going to listen to you as well. You don't make suggestions on your first day of employment. You need to also recognize the skills that you've gained since the last time you interviewed. But I want to challenge you. Do you even know what they are? Again, a lot of times we don't remember what our skills are. We think that, well, the employer is going to know that. I'm applying for this job. No, they aren't. No, they're not. Are you lining your skills up with what the employer is looking for? Or are you putting on your resume and your cover letter what you think the employer would like to hear, but it has nothing to do with the job description? I've had the clients do that in the past. Let me give you even a better real life example. This is a true story. So I was had a retail position open in my last role, and I had 50 resumes. Now, this doesn't happen anymore. Typically what happens is the employers are getting maybe 3 to 5 applicants. Isn't that amazing? So that gives us another step up into getting into the door and getting hired. Anyways, so I have to narrow it down to 3 people because my company will only let me interview 3 people. So I'm looking at this resume, and this gentleman is applying for the thrift store retail position, but he is a heck of a good forklift driver. I mean, he could do everything under the sun with a forklift, but we didn't own a forklift. So I assumed that as soon as he got a forklift job offer, because he was such a great forklift driver, that he would bail on me, my thrift store retail position, and go work for the forklift company. Now, I don't know that. Maybe the guy was sick of being on a forklift and he never wants to sit on one again. The point is his resume didn't display that, so I never interviewed him. So you want to make sure that your resume isn't giving away how old you are. You want to make sure that your resume is lining up with the skills that the company is looking for. And you want to make sure that you know what those skills are so that you can talk freely about them at the interview. You also want to be able to tell them why you're the better candidate today than you were the last time you interviewed. Why, and you want to be able to feel confident about this. So ask yourself, why am I a better candidate? And write it down. Be able to answer some of those questions. Jennifer, this looks like a great time for a question.
So we can have a few coming in regarding, hiding, your age on your resume.
Hmm?
Um, what about education degrees? Don't list dates.
Yes, that's exactly right. So keep your dates off, keep your years off. Now, you guys, there are exceptions to the rules. So sometimes when you're filling out an online application, it is going to force you to put in date. You're just going to have to abide by that. Many of those applications, you can't go on to the next page or continue on the process of filling out that application without putting in the dates. We are not talking about the application. We're talking about your resume. So on your resume, keep the date and the year off of the day that you graduated. Keep the day and the year off of the year that you got your college degree if you have one. Um, I also recommend that you use years instead of day, month, and year unless they're asking for that. Um, Typically, if they're asking for it, you're going to know based off of the job description because it's going to lay it out for you. And then again, when in doubt, reach out to us because we know the answers to a lot of that because we're working with the companies directly.
And then the next one asks, what if some of your direct experience comes from a position 10 to 13 years ago?
Excellent. So I said that 10 years, going back 10 years would be the ideal, but you can go back 15. Now, I want you to envision this. Let's say that you got these skills 25 years ago and you want to start to use them again, you don't lose those skills, many of them. Because I learned something doesn't mean I forget it if I go into a different role. The deal is that you still can put those skills on, but you're not going to list it under the company that you were working for. So I wouldn't do a chronological resume in that case. I would do what's called a combination resume. So a combination resume has the skills in the center of the page and your work history is down at the bottom. uh, I would be able then to add in those skills. Now, when I'm at the interview, I can explain more about if they really drill down on me and say, well, Glory, when did you actually get your certificate in Outlook? I'm just making this up. Then I could say, well, I got it back in, 1999, but I've been using it ever since, or however. But again, look at your resume and say, can I figure out how old I am off of my resume? And if you can, you need to adjust it. Do you have another question, Jennifer?
Yes, it says my last job, which I was laid off at, was 35 years ago. So if I do not list that, then would it not show a past job? How do I list that job but not show how long my tenure is?
So are you saying you haven't worked for 35 years? Is that what they're saying, Jennifer?
You know, yeah, it sounds like it. Correct me
So
if I'm wrong.
so that's a more specific question that I think that what I would like to do is have you reach out to us after this workshop so I can answer that better. Okay. Because if you haven't worked for 35 years, then we're going to talk about what have you been doing, and we're going to talk about the skills that you've been. I work with moms who haven't worked for 20 years. Now their children are adults and they're going back into the working field. Well, you're still working when you're at home being a mom. You're just not getting paid for it, but there's still a lot of skills. Okay. Do you have one more question, Jennifer?
This one's also probably very specific to Glory, but it
Okay.
says, my one burning question is about transitioning to a new role that I
Yep.
had over 10 years ago, actually over 20 years ago. How do I put that on a resume without aging myself and without having to create a functional resume? Because I've been told by HR managers that a functional resume is not well received. How do I transpose
Yes. So
all the
I don't want you to do a functional resume either. I would like for you to do a combination, which you've taken the combination and the chronological and combine them. If human resources is insisting on a chronological resume, then what I would do is I still would put my companies, but I would put my work history down at the bottom. So I would have ABC Supply, I would have all the skills that I did there, and then I would have my work history down at the bottom. ABC Supply from 2019, or excuse me, 1999 to 2024. But I wouldn't even go that far back. Now, again, this is where people have problems. They're like, well, I have worked there for 30 years. You're telling me I can't put 30 years on there? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you because you're not going to get the interview. You might be proud of the work that you've done, but you also want to get the interview. So that's the best way to do it is to make sure. Now, if those skills happened 30 years ago, I want you to be able to put that still on your resume if it applies to the job you're applying for. Again, we don't lose those skills. If you teach me something 30 years ago and I haven't used it for 30 years, are you sure that it's up to date? If it's not, do some research online, get it up to date, then you can say you've been using those skills now. Do you see what I mean? Okay. Another important part is I want you to ask yourself, what are my goals? And do I have goals? So one of the things that are super important is for you to be able to say, okay, so first off, today I'm going to go on Minnesota Works after this workshop and I'm going to find 5 jobs I want to apply for. Once I find those 5 jobs, if I can print them off, I'm going to. Otherwise, I'm going to go down to my local career force and print them off. Or I'm going to call up Gloria and I'm going to say, here's the job ID numbers. Have them ready for me at the front desk so I can come and get them. Go home in the comfort of your own home, read those job descriptions. Goodness, some of these companies, they write 2, 3 pages of job description. It's like, oh, really, they don't need to be that extensive, but some roles have to have that much information because they're specific on who they want to hire. So make those baby step goals, find the 5 jobs. You haven't applied yet. Reach out to us. Let us help you apply. Let us answer some of those questions when you're going through the application process. And if they're only asking for a cover letter and a resume, that's all you're going to give them. Only give them what they ask for. I've had people that will give their copy of their degree, they'll give letters of recommendations. The company doesn't want all that stuff until you're actually being interviewed. You bring the letters of recommendations to the interview, not during the application process. And then you just leave them sitting on the table. If you're doing a virtual interview, then you can email them after the interview. Okay. Jennifer, do you have one more question?
One came in that was really good. It says, how do interviewers feel about hearing that someone accepted early retirement if I am looking at working another 10 years?
Yeah, why would you want to tell them that? I would not tell them. I would not tell an interviewer that I've accepted early retirement. Because then to me, that just says, okay, so why are you coming here to work? You don't want the interviewer to start questioning why you want the job. You want to be able to confidently talk to them about why you want the job. Being seen as overqualified. So this is the person now who, again, has put everything on their resume that they have done in the last 30 years. And they have many things that are on that resume that do not apply to the job. So, being the forklift driver, if we don't own a forklift, I do not need to know you were driving a forklift. I had a gentleman that I was working with, and 20 years ago, he was a CDL truck driver. And I said, are you going to go into truck driving? Is that why you have this on your resume? He said, no. So I'm very proud of the fact that I went to CDL class and I was a truck driver. And I want that on my resume. I said, well, I believe that that's the reason that you're not getting interviews because you have that on your resume. They're thinking that as soon as a truck driver position comes along, which tends to pay pretty good, you're going to bail on that company and go after that job instead. If you don't plan on being a truck driver, take it off your resume. And he did. He took it off and he ended up getting an interview and getting hired very quickly after that. So don't be seen as being overqualified. Losing momentum, we asked the question, how's it been going? And a lot of you are saying slow, frustrating. Please reach out to us because we can help you with that because us, the job counselors, workforce development representatives, we understand how enduring it is. We understand that that momentum can slow down really quickly, especially if you are sending out all these resumes and you're not getting any traffic from it, meaning that you're not getting interviews. If that is the case, I want you to stop what you're doing. Stop sending any more resumes and let us do a resume review. How about your narrative? Is your narrative negative? Are you sitting around telling me about how old you are and that you can't do things like you used to do? Or are you telling me stuff like, well, back in my day, while I'm interviewing you? Are you able to transfer those valuable skills that you paid such a high price for into a role that is going to be productive if I were to hire you? Or are you going to be a troublemaker? Are you going to be set in your ways? Are you going to struggle with learning something new? It's very important to watch your self-talk. What are you saying? Do you know that they actually have proven now with technology that if you're telling yourself that you're getting old, that your cells start to line up with that and start to age faster than if somebody is saying to themselves, I'm getting younger and younger every day? I say that to myself. Now, is it true? I don't know. The clock probably doesn't agree with me, but there's a lot of things that don't necessarily that I agree with other people are saying. I'm telling myself I'm getting younger and younger every day. Why not? That will come across at the interview. In addition to that, are you updating your skills? You know, some of this stuff doesn't take a lot to update your skills, but a lot of times we're running on fear. So it could be fear that, oh boy, I don't like computers, or fear that if I don't get a job soon here, I'm going to lose everything I've worked so hard for. Fear of that I can't learn some new skills. Again, reach out to us because we can walk through this with you and we can give you some insight on how it's not that scary. We will validate the fact that you are feeling that way at the moment, but you're not going to stay in that fear. You know, we meet you right where you're at, but we don't leave you there. We're experts at this, and we will see that you're going to be able to continue to go out and get that decent paying job that you so deserve. So let's talk more about being seen as overqualified. Are you listing too many accomplishments or unrelated accomplishments? Again, the forklift driver. How do you talk? Are you actually listening? I always say that we've got one mouth and two ears. I think we need two ears for the fact that we need to really focus more on listening than speaking. Do you behave like you did when you were in charge? I have a lot of people who are actually applying for a job that isn't in the higher level anymore. And the reason for that is because they got sick of the stress. I'm a strong believer in too much is given, much is required. Well, if you're higher up in a company and you have a lot of responsibility, I work with people all the time who they're like, Lori, I want to get out of this high stress role and I want to get into something that's going to make me more comfortable. Okay, well then you need to tailor your resume towards those positions, and you need to impress upon the interviewer that you're going to do the job the way the interviewer wanted, not the way you used to be in charge and do. Again, these are all self-talks where you're going to stop and ask yourself, how am I behaving? How am I talking to myself? Losing momentums. You know, it's really super important too for you to make some goals for yourself. So like I say, finding the 5 jobs. You know, what's really interesting is after you find those 5 jobs, typically what happens is that person that's working with us find the 5 jobs, read all the job descriptions, then the next day, which would be tomorrow, they'll reach back out to me and we will talk about those 5 jobs, and they usually only apply for 2 of them because the other 3 didn't turn out to be the jobs that they thought they were, or there was something in there with the hours, or maybe it was all nights and they only wanted days. Maybe the pay wasn't as good, but they're still making goals for themselves and they still found 5 jobs, and that gets back to their research. So they have researched what different companies in the area are paying. Do they offer benefits? What are the hours? How does it seem in their job description? Does it seem like they care about the employee, or does it seem like they care more about the dollar? You can tell that by reading the job description. But remember that every employer is in business to make money. So if you can say to them, you know what, the wisdom I have paid a high price for, and in turn, I believe I can make you a lot of money and I'll make some money too. Nobody says that at the interview. I never had one person ever say anything about making money. They were all about what you're going to do for me instead. Okay. Let's talk about your narrative. And, we have talked about this. Is your narrative negative? But if you're still struggling with this, I want you to reach out to us after this workshop and let us help you. Now, I work with a lot of people who have been fired. So, is your narrative negative? Do you go to that next interview and start talking badly about the employer because they fired you? First off, if you were fired or let go from your last job, you don't ever say, I was fired from my last job anymore. Now, you need to practice this
Can you go
saying
over?
because it is very, very difficult to say. So, I mean, I had to say it a few times because it's kind of a mouthful. But if they say, why did you leave your last job? Now, remember, do not assume they're even going to ask you that. One of the things I find really fascinating is that a lot of employers are not even asking that job anymore because they need your help. So they don't want to know why you left your last job. They need your help. Your resume shows you can do the job. So come in and interview well, they want to hire you. But if you are asked why'd you leave your last job, I want you to say this. I left my last job because I was involuntarily separated. And as a result, it has brought me here to you today. And then stop talking. Don't let your narrative be negative about that company. Now, every employer that I've talked to, every single one of them have said these two things are the most important to them in one fashion or another. Might use a few different words, but this is the gist of it. First thing is their reputation. When I say to them, what's the most important thing to you? My reputation. I've worked very hard to get a good reputation, and I'm not willing to sacrifice that for anybody. So if you're talking negative about your previous employer, even if they were horrible and they treated you badly, if you're saying something negative about them, the interviewer, the employer, your new potential employer is thinking, goodness, what are you going to say about us if you don't work out here? Now, this has nothing to do with your age. This has everything to do with their reputation. Then the second thing that the employers will say to me is that, Glory, so my reputation is the first important, and the second thing is the person that I'm hiring going to get along? Are they going to get along with the great employees I already have in place, or are they going to come in and they're going to start to cause problems? You won't get hired if you're perceived as a troublemaker. You won't get hired if you're perceived as a whistleblower. Now, there are certain situations that I got your back on this for your previous employer and what ended up happening to you, but don't bring it to the new job. You have to let it go. Another piece that is so important is, are you updating your skills? So we've got two suggestions here. One of them is with Dislocated Worker Program. If you're interested in finding out more information about that, then I want you to reach back out to the Career Force. Each one of our career forces has partners, and each Dislocated Worker Program is run a little bit different. So that's why it's important for you to reach out the one that is closest to your home and gather more information. Another great resource is Coursera. Coursera is all online. It's an online platform that is college and teaches classes. But I also want you to be careful when you use Coursera because there's a pop-up box all the time that says pay $49 a month to get access to some of these classes. I'm not telling you to buy any of those, but what I want you to do is take another look at some of the free classes that they offer. They also offer some certificates and good things like that. So, Jennifer, I wanted to just have you see if you've got any more questions, because it looks to me like we have a little bit of time that we can answer some.
Yes, we do. Take a look here. There was a lot about resumes. It says, do you have a sample of a combination resume? You said you could list skills in one section of the resume and put the work history at the bottom.
Yes. So what I'll do, Jennifer, is I will send you a sample of the combination resume, and you can just include that in your follow-up email tomorrow.
And there was one that kind of adding on to that.
Okay.
Skills. I believe. Let's see here, show you. Oh, it says, do you like for us for the jobs, if you were to list them on the bottom, should you include, if you were to not include those dates of your jobs, will that look suspicious? And if you were really just to focus on the accomplishments and not like the dates of when you had those jobs, I guess is what it says. If I do focus on accomplishments, can I list jobs at the bottom of my resume without including dates, or will that look suspicious?
Yeah, it will look suspicious. So now again, some of these questions are really tailored towards the individual. So some of my answers are kind of more of a blanket statement. But what I want you to do is I want you to look at your resume and ask yourself, can I figure out how old I am just by looking at that resume? With some of those skills that you might have learned 30 years ago, if you haven't used them recently, I do still know how to do them. Are you updated in those skills? And if they're basic skills like customer service, um, obviously you know how to still do that. You're just going to adjust your resume so that you've got the skills listed there. But remember that you're going to be talking more in detail at the interview. But if you make your resume look suspicious by not putting the years on there that you worked, or a company that just you're just putting then that on there, and when I'm looking at it, it just looks like it's misplaced. You're opening a door to not being interviewed. So your resume is as good as a fact as it gets you interviews. And again, some of these questions, feel free to reach out to us after this workshop and I can kind of drill down more on it. I also want to let you know that when I send that combination resume template to Jennifer, she's going to send it to everybody. Okay, so you don't need to use it, but it'll be available to you if you want to use it.
And then there was one that said, I have at least 15 years left to work, but I'm not looking to climb the corporate ladder. I want something I enjoy doing, even if it pays less. How do you express that when you are overqualified for a position?
Excellent question. So first off, when you're overqualified for the position, you need to keep some of your skills off. Now, let me tell you, boy, this is painful to do. It's painful to delete some of those skills if they are not needed at your new job. Delete them, take them off. Um, Goodness, if you say that you're want to work comfortably for the next 15 years, that's a long time. That's fantastic. So the deal is you don't talk about that either. But if they say to you, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? You still aren't going to say, well, I don't want to climb the corporate ladder. You're not going to say that at the interview, even though that's your hope. But I would love if you would say to me, if I ask you that question and I'm interviewing you, you say, I see myself working for you. That's the impression you want to give. Now, I always recommend people say, I see myself working for you, and hopefully I will have gotten a promotion. But now you want to be able to say that knowing that they do promote people. I had one person that I interviewed one time and they said, I see myself working for you, Glory, and hopefully I will have gotten your job. Well, what happens if my job's the highest one on the ladder? I'm not going to hire you based on that, thinking that you're going to be pining for my job all the time too. So apply your common sense in this situation. But the point is that employers want to hire you, train you, and keep you working for them forever. Stop putting years and limitations on yourself. Come in and tell me you're going to work for me as long as you can, and I will hire you. Don't give me a time limit. I didn't ask you for a time limit. Fair enough? Okay, Jennifer, I think we still have time for like one more question.
Okay. There were a few wanted to know, how do you answer the question when about being fired from a job?
Okay, so the answer to that is that I want you to say I was involuntarily separated. And as a result, it has brought you here to me. Trust me, nobody's going to ask you why you were fired from a job. That's not part of an interview, but they may ask you, why did you leave your last job? Now, don't assume they're going to ask you that because a lot of employers don't even ask that anymore. But if they ask you, why did you leave your last job and you were fired? I want you to say, I was involuntarily separated. And as a result, it has brought me here to you today. Jennifer, I think we still have time for another question.
I don't see, I mean, those are basically most of the questions that we had.
Okay.
A lot of them are repetitive. If you guys have any more, feel free to put it in the chat box.
Yes, and what I'm going to do too is when we're done with the workshop, we scour the chat just to make sure that we've answered your questions. And if we haven't, I will either contact you or send a follow-up email to you and give you an answer or a better answer. Like I say, some of these answers are kind of more generalized. So if you want to get more specific with us, reach out to us because we're more than happy to do that too. I also want to make sure that you're looking for that follow-up email. It'll be sent out to you either tomorrow or Thursday at the latest. In that follow-up email, we will include the combination resume template. We're also going to include the career force locations. We're going to include a copy of the PowerPoint and my talking notes. So you're going to be able to get all of that information. Plus, we send you a recorded version of this workshop. So then you can watch it again. I know we do give out a lot of information so you can get a better idea of what we said and watch it one more time if you want. So in the meantime, we are excited to have you come to work. I want you to also check out the state of Minnesota. Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind putting in our chat really quick, mn.gov/careers. State of Minnesota has a lot of job openings right now. Come and work with us. We are delighted to have you, and we've got a lot of jobs that you would fit into perfectly. So, having said that, you guys have a wonderful day. I hope that this has helped you, and we will see you in the working field. Bye.
Bye.